Tracy LaLonde, you are an entrepreneur, a speaker, a business development coach with 28 years in professional public speaking and 20 years in the legal industry. And now you have published a book which is called The Joychiever Journey, Evade Burnout, Surpass Your Goals, and out happy everyone else. We don't want to skip that competitive spirit. So Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
So I've been reading your book. I love the story of this overachiever girl who wants to accomplish everything, and one day she discovered that she's not discovering joy, which is the most important part of our life. So I wonder if we could start with you telling us a little bit about your background. Where does this overachiever girl come from?
Well, the overachiever girl comes from being when she was a small girl, as many overachievers experience or high achievers, that your parents and others around you have so much hope for your future and have expectations for you that ultimately become your own expectations, and then you just start living your life according to a checklist. Get the right education, check, get a good job, check, advance in your career, check, have a family, all those things. And that's been my life. And I've enjoyed it a ton, and I've had a lot of great success. But it just, at one point, just became too much.
And okay, so let me ask you, do you think this, so your parents were rewarding your success, okay, and you were
Absolutely.
responding to that stimulus? Do you think there is different personalities in the sense that the same stimulus that work for you doesn't work for somebody else? For example, I am sure my parents also wanted the best for me, but I was a troublemaker. I mean, I was doing all the wrong things you shouldn't be doing as a little kid, and I'm even afraid or embarrassed to mention some of them. And my parents wanted me to be a successful, a good student. They rewarded me when I got good grades, but I said, screw that. I'm gonna go and play with my kids, and I'm going to, I don't know, trespass in people's. I used to trespass in people's property to steal their mangoes from their mango trees, or stuff like that. And of course, my parents will punish me. Sometimes I got spanked, and I will say, yes, mom, yes, dad, I'm sorry. And then the next day, I will do the same thing. So in your case, you respond to the stimulus of, yes, you got good grades, and we are so proud of you, and you continue on the same track, while other people don't do that. So you think it's just a personality trait?
Well, I don't know. I think everyone, comes into their own in their own ways. And I think that there are parents or other loved ones who care for us who provide the guardrails. And some folks like me happen to get on that overachiever path maybe earlier than others. But I think everybody, if they're interested in achieving and having success in their lives, come to it in their own ways. And so they may come to it later. And you were just railing against the guardrails when you were a kid, whereas in comparison, I went right down the middle of the line. I was, the well-behaved, rule-following kid. That said, we've both had successes, and we both have achieved. And there was probably a moment in your life where you said, okay, I want to get this figured out and get this organized so I can have success in my professional career.
Right. And also, do you think culture have, because it's not only your parents, but also your whole cultural environment? I mean, if you are surrounded with other kids who are struggling to get A's and to be good in sports and all this and that, maybe that's the stimulus that you get to become an overachiever. While in my neighborhood, I was surrounded with kids who were mischief. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
was perhaps the biggest influence in my life. Screw my parents, I'm just gonna go and steal some mangoes from my neighbors.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything, your society and your cultural are definitely your influencers, whether it be your friends, whether it be school, teachers, advisors, other relatives, your socioeconomic level. I mean, all of those go into play. But when it comes to the Joychiever journey, the similar characteristics between everybody is at some point, folks have that desire to achieve, and in some cases overachieve.
Right. Okay. So you are this good girl. You're getting good grades, and then what else happened in your career?
Well, I started to have success. And so I did training and development in the 90s in the high tech consulting space and continued to advance that ladder. And then in 2000, I started working at a law firm. And that was really a step into a big part of my career of working with lawyers in big law and big law firms. And so continued to have success, became a consultant in 2006, in which case my success was completely up to me. I had to find my own clients, create content, and deliver the work then. And so, there is that drive to pay the bills in many ways, and also just to continue to make my clients happy and grow the business.
Okay, so you are an expert in public speaking, and a lot of my listeners, well, they are curious about this kind of career. How can they become a better speaker? How can they connect better with the audience? How can they craft interesting stories to deliver their ideas? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a public speaker? How do you develop it? How do you share your knowledge with your clients?
Yeah. So public speaking for me is something that I was innately born with as a skill set. And I got good feedback about that starting back when I was 12 years old and gave my first speech, in class. And so for me, it probably came a little bit easier than it does for others because many, many, many folks fear public speaking. And it's one of those skill sets that everybody can do. It's a learnable skill set. So even if someone is very introverted or shy, they can still be a great public speaker. The key is to practice. And so there are a number of resources out there, whether someone wants to go to Toastmasters, which is free, or practice on YouTube videos, or get in with other groups to practice, or find opportunities at work, even if it's just leading a meeting. It doesn't have to be a big stage with hundreds of people in the room in order to engage in public speaking. I think of it as if there's somebody else on the other side of the table, that's a public speaking opportunity. So with intentionality around practicing and focusing on some of the basic core principles of good public speakers, anybody can be successful at that.
Okay, so you were not afraid to face
No.
an audience ever since you said 11 years old?
12.
12. Okay. So, but this is a this fear is deep inside of our DNA because we were the what is a hunter gatherers and we were always in pack. So the one moment that you were outside of your pack, you felt vulnerable. Uh, and this is in part our fear for public speaking. Would you say that maybe you were in such a comfortable and protected environment that you just didn't have that fear?
No, no, because I'm still out there, outside of the pack. And by the way, I still get butterflies. I still get
Okay,
nervous,
I see.
especially if my audience is large or sophisticated or new to me. But it doesn't escalate to stage fright necessarily. So even though I say it's been a skill that I feel it's more natural to me, it doesn't mean I don't still get nervous, and it doesn't mean I don't prepare with the same amount of rigor that I suggest to my clients that they prepare with. It's just that I haven't had to overcome that deep-seated fear that many folks have to deal with.
Wow. Okay. Because I know that that's a bigger, a huge barrier. I know that I joined Toastmasters, and the first 10 speeches that I gave, they were a complete disaster. I mean, imagine someone with their nose running and the eyes crying and the voice breaking and all that. Those were my first 10
Mm.
speeches in front of an audience. And sure, people will tell me, oh, be confident, or, just, I don't know, get into your message and forget, all these tips that I hear. And no, it never went away, only to doing it over and over, like you just say, practice. If I was able to control it, it's never gone away, but I'm able to control it. And now, like, a subconscious takeover, or my mind goes into autopilot and kind of focus on the message and kind of suppress that fear until after it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because look at you now. I mean, this is a version of public speaking right here, if you think about it. And so that's exactly what I've seen happen with my clients who are very afraid. Is you've just got to kind of navigate it, feel it, understand it, and contain it so that it does go on autopilot for you. Now, it's not to say that you're not exhausted afterwards. You know, for folks who have to extend that much energy, when you're done, you probably want to take a nap. And I let people know that that's okay, you know, because you're exerting a lot of energy to be really present with your audience and to communicate clearly.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about the dynamic of you, the public speaking coach, with a client that maybe is a, I don't know, a super achiever in their industry, whether it's law or software development, a person who is used to always giving the appearance of winning and power of self-confidence, and all of a sudden that person is breaking apart in front of an audience, and you have to help them out to overcome that fear.
Well, so a lot of it has to do with breathing. Breathing helps us with everything. It helps us to manage our emotions. It helps us to manage our fear. It also helps us to manage the rate of speech and our tone of voice and the drama that we create. And so if someone is literally breaking down in the moment, I encourage them to just pause and breathe. Because that pause is going to feel a lot longer inside than it does outside, but we've got to get that under control. Another technique that I encourage folks to use is to ask a question to the audience. So if they're feeling, you know, verklempt inside, I encourage them to get the audience engaged, ask a question, get them talking, because then it gives the speaker, you know, a moment or two to kind of gather their thoughts while their audience is speaking. And then also in general, before we get to the breakdown point, what's different in the way that you described the example person is for someone who's really successful in general and whatever they're an expert in, when it comes to public speaking, I encourage them not to focus on themselves. I encourage them to focus on their audience. You know, what is it that your audience needs? What kind of experience do you want to create for them? And when I have them focus it on creating an experience for their audience rather than being the smartest person in the room, that helps take care of some of the nerves as well, because we're a host, if you will, with information for a gathering.
Right. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now let's go back to you and your life. So at one time you were an employee and you decided to say, screw this, I'm going to become a consultant. I'm on my own. Now, this is a step that is so frightening for so many people. I mean, we become addicted to this paycheck, and that letting go of that security, many people never do that out of fear. Uh, can you tell me and how you got the courage to let go of that paycheck and go on your own?
Yeah, well, so I've always been, I'm an only child, which helps. So I've always been kind of inner motivated to do things my own way. And I actually made a baby step. So yes, I was an employee, but I didn't automatically go to only my own business. I went to a very small consulting business. And at the time we had about 5 people. I was still responsible for bringing in my own clients and as if I were on my own, but there was already a bit of a client base there, and there was already some content there in the business development space. And so it was this nice kind of hybrid place to be where I was very much driving my own practice, if you will, but I was a part of something else that could help me transition into, you know, driving a business.
Okay, and in the field of entrepreneurship, there are two trains of thought. There is the one that jump off the cliff and grow your wings on your way out and down, or build a bridge slowly. And in your case, you decided to build that bridge slowly until you could become an entrepreneur on your own. But would you say that's the best way, or does the other ideology have some merit of just jumping off the bridge and, you know, burn your bridges and you are just on your own right now?
Okay, well, I never want anybody to burn bridges, regardless, because your old employer might be your first client. So we want to be careful about that. You know, I think either philosophy can work. What's critical, though, for both of them is that the person maybe while they're an employee, which I happen to do without thinking about it intentionally, is to grow a network of people who could ultimately become clients or customers or be helpful in your own business. And so whether that's, me who's doing public speaking and business development consulting to lawyers, or someone who wants to sell widgets, having access to folks who ultimately might become customers and having built that up so there's some sort of base is going to help either scenario have more success, whether you transition into it or go in feet first. That's what I found helps people, entrepreneurs, the most. And the ones who don't do that, because I've coached lots of entrepreneurs just to help them, folks who've been like me, who've been working in a law firm and decide they want to go on their own. As they're starting to think about it, that's the number one thing I tell them, is start to grow your network. People have got to know you. And if you're delivering products, people have to know your products. So start socializing. Hey, I'm thinking about, starting this business. What do you think? And get people's opinions. And then It's almost soft selling before you have something for them to buy. So then when it's ready to buy, you've got a whole bunch of buyers, at least psychologically kind of lined up.
Okay, great. Okay, so most of you, a great part of your book is telling your story of how you were an overachiever, how you were burning out, doing all this traveling. What is it? Over 100 days on the road or something like that, being in 3 cities on the same week. Can you tell us more or less, give us a picture of how your life at that time?
Oh, it was, Alan, there's so many emotions at that time because I was wildly successful. I had lots of great clients. The work was really fun. The people I got to work with at my law firm clients, like the individuals, I really loved. And I took pride in the fact that I was able to fly in a lot of airplanes and I had all this, status at airlines and the clubs and the hotels. And so for a while, it was awesome. It was and then it just became too much. And part of that for me is my husband and I don't have any children, and he travels a lot too. And so I really lost sight of keeping the work contained. Like I didn't have boundaries. Right. I didn't have natural things that would cause me to stop the work brain and do the other social brain or family brain or things like that. Now, certainly he and I spent time together, but I became thinking about work all the time. Constantly. It was really hard to unplug because there was always more to do and something to have happen. And I was gone a lot. And I was becoming really interested in having other elements of my life being fulfilled, whether it be volunteering or other social activities. Friendships floundered because I couldn't commit many cases. So it just became, at one point it was like this, and then it just went like this. It was just too much.
Okay, and then obviously this wasn't gradual. You just went up like that, it's little by little, and then you started finding yourself dissatisfied with your life. But there must have been a breaking point, a moment that you said, okay, this has to stop. These are the steps that I'm going to start taking to change my life. Can you just take us to that moment?
Yeah, so that was in 2016, and the chronic stress, which is basically a chronic flood of cortisol and adrenaline running through my body, was manifesting in physical illness. My heart was palpitating, my hair was thinning and falling out. I was very irritable. I would cry. Wasn't quite depressed, but I was definitely on that path. And so it was the physical cues that my body was basically saying, help. I was crying, uncle, like you've got to change this. Otherwise, literally, it will kill you. And everybody knows that, everybody knows that stress is the silent killer. Well, it was manifesting for me in that way. And I just paid attention finally because I'd ignored it for years.
What's the series of steps that you took in order to change your life?
Yeah. So I left the business that I thought I would work at forever. And on my last day there, I tattooed joy to my wrist. It is a visual reminder to not let myself get into that place again. Because, by the way, the achieving need doesn't go away. And that's not what I'm trying to have overachievers do. Or I really want them to become joycheevers where they realize they can achieve and have happiness. But for me, I didn't have that roadmap. I didn't know how to do that. And I felt like I needed to just completely check out. And thankfully, with the blessing and support of my husband, he let me do that. And so I stopped work completely, left the industry with absolutely no plan. I had no idea what I was going to do. The only kind of plan I had was to get healthy again and to kind of recover from that experience and reclaim my joy. And so I took 8 months off. I traveled a bunch. I hiked, I read, I did some introspection, and really started to, what ultimately started the Joychiever journey path of getting clear on what is it that I need. And then ultimately I decided, unfortunately I still had to work. So I had to figure out some sort of way to make a living. And in that reflection realized I still wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I still wanted to be a consultant. I didn't want to go work in a company or a firm or what have you. So that was the manifest of my next business called Zafis.
Okay, but when you say you left the business, I mean, the business was you, wasn't it? What do you do?
I had teammates. Yeah, no,
Oh.
so when I joined it, there were 5 of us, and we grew, over time at our largest to about 10. But then 2 years prior, we had sold ourselves to a private equity firm.
Okay,
and
that
so,
makes sense.
yeah, we went from 10 people to 150 people.
Okay, wow. You're an
Yeah.
overachiever. Okay, so you tattooed the word joy in your wrist, and you start now this new consulting that you have. And in addition to that, to top it off, you wrote a book, The Joychiever Journey. Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, well, so the book is really, like I said, to try to help overachievers find more joy, and basically it's high achievers. So someone may not identify as an overachiever, but it's anybody who has an emphasis on achievement, in their lives, and frankly to help them not do what I did, to help them figure out how to make joy a proactive and intentional choice, almost daily in some cases.
Wow.
And so I think that also, though, and what the book really is about helping people get really clear about what makes them tick. And so I'm fashioning it after a road trip, i.e. the journey, so the Joychiever journey. And if the destination is your happy place, i.e. your joy, then there's a number of stops along the way, and I call them the true self stops. And it's those times, those stops are about, deeply reflecting on what makes you most happiest in 7 different areas. And once we have clarity in those 7 different areas, then we know how to make choices for joy. But I think a lot of people are living on that checklist, that achievement checklist.
Right.
And so I'm trying to add some other elements to the checklist for them.
Can you just mention very quick those 7 true self stops?
Yeah, so it's perceptions vista. So it's how you perceive the world or take in information. It's kind of the idea of glass half empty or glass half full. If you always see the glass is half empty, you're going to have a hard time finding joy. That's the first stop. Second, then, is values village. So helping people to get clear around their top 5 to 10 values, because they are the beliefs or the undercurrent by which you make all decisions. Third, then, the stop is strengths mountain. And so that's helping folks to identify the strengths of which they find the most joy, not just things that we're good at, because a lot of us are good at things that we don't really like to do potentially, or aren't the exultant joy. So it's getting clear around those skills, and then trying to figure out how to have the best part of your job be the biggest part of your job. Next, so we can't do all work and no play. We have to have some play. So we have to have some hobbies and thinking about what to do. And frankly, for a while, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know how to figure out what a hobby could be, because all I did was work. Fifth is body beach. So we have to take care of our bodies, because if we don't, we're not alive. So therefore, there's definitely no joy. And so in that, there's a lot of things I could talk about. There's numerous industries focused on the body, but I talk about stress, sleep, and exercise. Then we have 6th is relationships harbor. And so it's looking at friendships and being as strategic and intentional around cultivating friendships like we are with love relationships. Because I find that we put a lot of rigor to that. We create a list of the ideal partner, and we try to find that partner and have breakups, but friendships don't quite happen that way. And many of us get caught in friendships that are more joy robbing than joy inducing. And so helping people think through that. And then finally is what I call me moments market. And so me moments market is that kind of weekly rejuvenation of you. So I find that many of us are kind of giving of ourselves all the time, and we aren't pouring into the you reservoir. And so it's, being intentional around, okay, well, this week I've got to find a half an hour because I want to read a book, or, every day I want to take the dog for a walk, or I want to take a nap one day. Because overachievers, they're not only working in a professional sense, but that they're coming home and working too, because we've got families and care for other ones. And so we're constantly putting out. And so the idea of me moments market is to put in.
Wow.
Okay. So those are all the stops.
Sounds like a very enticing book to dive in. But let me ask you. So I started my podcast and my blog as a personal finance coach. Okay. And I was telling people, don't spend a lot of money. Just put some money into your savings account and prepare for the future, blah, blah, blah. I was saying all this while there are multi-global companies with billions of dollars in advertising telling people, buy my stuff. Okay, so eventually I just say, okay, I'm just going to fight this battle, but I'm not going to let this main message overwhelm me. Now, you are giving a message not to uh, not not to overachieve, not necessarily not to overachieve, but to also take care of yourself. And your message is a little bit different from the message of Elon Musk, who says you have to work 120 hours a week if you want to be successful. Steve Jobs, who says screw friendships. If you have a dream, go and design your dream. Or Gary Vaynerchuk, who says you gotta hustle 24 hours a day. How does it feel to tell people, take care of yourself as well, and don't listen to Elon Musk, one of the persons that, almost every new entrepreneur admire? How does it feel to be in your position going against the grain?
I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that, because I don't know Elon Musk, but I wonder about how happy he is. And candidly, if that's the way he wants to live his life, more power to him. Totally fine about that. But we do really only have one life. As trite as that sounds, it truly is. It truly is that way. And candidly, some people don't care about joy. They just want to achieve. And if that's their thing, go. Awesome. Fine. Yet I think most of us want to have happiness or want to have more happiness, because we all wonder, what's the meaning of life? Well, I think the meaning of life is joy.
Yeah. And at the beginning of your book, you mentioned about this nurse who wrote a book about the 6 or 5 regrets most people have when they're in the deathbed, and they none of them say, "I wish I could have worked more."
Right. Exactly. And by the way, this comes from someone who loves what she does. Right. I love what I do, but I am not going to die wishing I worked more. Absolutely not. Right. There's more to life than that.
Okay, well, this is an amazing conversation. I wondered, Tracy, if you could just tell us one more time the name of your book and where people can follow you in social media or your website or these places.
Great, thank you. So the book is called The Joychiever Journey, Evade Burnout, Surpass Your Goals, and Out Happy Everyone. And my website is joychiever.com. And you can also find us at the same handle on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Just look for Joychiever, and you can follow us there. And I also have a newsletter called the Joy Journal. So if you go to the website, it comes out every Friday with just little tips and reminders for how to work in joy to your life.
Wow, that's so great. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing. Really, we need a counterbalance to this, work 24 hours a day mentality. So thank you. I'm so grateful for your work.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me.